If you're heading to Bosnia and Herzegovina and you're wondering what traditional Bosnian food is like, well, let me take you on a tour of the dishes that you're going to want to try. These aren't just items on a restaurant menu, they're hearty, deeply rooted meals that tell you something about the people who cook them and the culture that shaped them. Most of these dishes I hadn't tasted in years when I made my last trip back to Bosnia, so I made myself a kind of a culinary checklist. Shevapshishi, begova chorba, burek, sarma, meals that are cooked under the sach, Bosnian coffee rituals, food that had once been part of my daily life when I lived and worked in Bosnia a few years back. When I returned more recently, I wanted to find out how these traditional foods that had once been part of my day to day life held up in my memory. So here's how I did it, dish by dish. My first Bosnian meal back in 1998 was at a place called Hodžić in Sarajevo, famous for their shevapshishi. Naturally, I went back there again to do it once more. Shevapshishi are little skinless sausages, usually made from a mix of lamb and beef, and spiced just enough, grilled to order, and served piping hot in a soft, chewy, round bread called somun. The bread itself is worth the trip. Baked fresh, often still warm with that slightly smoky flavor from the oven. The shababs are served with a mound of chopped raw onion, and for many people, a glass of drinkable yogurt. But I've never been much of a yogurt man. I take mine with a cold Sarajevsko beer. No regrets. Begova chorba is a classic Bosnian soup, sometimes called Bayes soup. It's thick and creamy, made with chicken, vegetables, a hint of okra, and often enriched with sour cream. The chorba arrives with a chunk of soman to dip into it. It's a hearty lunch, comforting, familiar, and deeply satisfying. Great on a chilly day. At a slava, a family celebration in Republika Srpska, we sat down to a traditional spread that included sarma. Sarma is a kind of a cabbage roll, but with its own distinctive Bosnian character. The filling is usually ground beef or pork, mixed with rice, onions, garlic, paprika, black pepper, and a few herbs. It's rolled in sour cabbage leaves, pickled so that they add a gentle tang, and slowly cooked in a tomato based sauce until it's tender. Served with cornbread muffins still warm from the oven, this is soul food in the truest sense. Muchkalica is a kind of a meat stew, but that doesn't quite do it justice. It starts with diced pork, beef, or lamb, browned in a pan with onions and garlic. Then come the bell peppers, tomatoes, spices, and sometimes hot paprika for a bit of a kick. Everything simmers until it melds into a rich, flavorful stew. It's rustic and utterly delicious, one of those dishes that you'll find in smaller towns and well worth seeking out. There's one more traditional way of cooking in Bosnia that deserves a spotlight, ispod sacha, or under the bell. Underneath that dome, the food roasts slowly, surrounded by coals from all sides. It's a kind of a Bosnian slow cooking method, usually meat, potatoes, and vegetables sealed in with their juices tender and infused with a wood smoke flavor that no oven can replicate. It's rustic, it's ancient, and it's delicious. I had meals under this hatch many times over the years, but one I'll never forget was at a restaurant in Banja Luka called Stari Mlin. That night was September 11th, 2001. I'd spent the afternoon in front of the television, watching in disbelief as the events unfolded in New York. Thousands of miles from home, I sat down that evening to a quiet meal in a rustic setting by the fireplace. While I was working in Bosnia, friends and family often worried about my safety. It had been a recent war zone, and there were still many uneasy moments. Yet that night, I was safe and comfortable. While back in North America, people were suddenly facing fear and uncertainty on a scale they hadn't imagined. The dish was lamb with potatoes cooked for hours until everything was tender enough to fall apart at the touch of a fork. There was a crust on the potatoes, and the tender meat had a rich flavor from the smoke and slow heat. That whole meal experience has stayed with me for the past 25 years. Sometimes it's not just what you eat, but when and how that makes a meal unforgettable. And of course, there's the beer, pivo in Bosnian. Almost every city has its own brewery and its loyal following. In Sarajevo, you'll want to try Sarajevsko pivo. In Tuzla, it's Tuzlansko. In Mostar, it's Mostarsko. And in Banja Luka, the local favorite is Nectar. If you're visiting Republika Srpska, the Serbian region of Bosnia and Herzegovina, you'll often see the Nectar logo written in Cyrillic. Don't be thrown off. It looks like Hekwap, but it's still Nectar, and it tastes just as good in either alphabet. Ordering a beer is easy. Just say, Yabi pivo, molim. I'll have a beer, please. A small effort in the local language usually earns a smile, and somehow the beer always tastes better when it comes with that kind of a connection. On my last visit to Sarajevo, I also had another unforgettable meal, this time at Inat Kucha, a historic restaurant across the river from Sarajevo's City Hall. I ordered a sampler of Bosnian specialties. There were dolma, onions hollowed out and stuffed with spiced ground meat and rice, slow cooked until tender. Then bamia, okra in a tomato and onion sauce. That's the one that locals say is good for the potention. It's a tasty substitute for Viagra, I guess. And yes, I had more shababshishi because once is never enough. It all came with a dollop of sour cream and another Sarajevsko pivo. For dessert, I walked down the street to an old restaurant I used to frequent and ordered tufahia, a poached apple stuffed with ground walnuts and sugar and topped with whipped cream. It's simple but elegant. Served with vochni chai or fruit tea, it was a perfect end to a nostalgic meal. And you can't visit Bosnia and not have burek. This is a flaky phyllo pastry, usually rolled or spiraled and filled with mincemeat, cheese, or spinach. You'll find it sliced like a pie and sold by weight at every corner bakery. I often had it for breakfast. It's great to eat while walking slowly through a morning market. Fresh salads were everywhere. Simple plates with ripe tomatoes, cucumbers, and local cheeses, olives, and onions. We also shared platters piled high with cured meat, Travnik cheese, which is salty and crumbly and sort of like feta, olives, and then these little fried donut bites, somewhere between a donut and a pancake. Light, chewy, and perfect with kaimak, which is a rich, creamy dairy spread that tastes like whipped, salty butter. Every morning I would order my go-to, Produjenu kavu sa mlijkom, an extended coffee with milk, somewhere between an Americano and a small latte. It always came with a glass of water and sometimes a biscuit or a sugar cube on the side. And then, of course, there's Bosnian coffee, similar to Turkish coffee, but with its own ceremony. It's brewed in a small copper pot, served in delicate cups with coffee foam on the top and thick grounds at the bottom. Sweeten it how you like, with sugar cubes dropped in or dipped in and nibbled between sips. It's not just coffee, it's a ritual, a pause, a moment to reflect. Tasting these dishes again was like opening a well loved book and finding the pages hadn't faded at all. Every bite carried a story, and every plate brought back a moment. That's one of the gifts of solo travel. You can go where your memory takes you. No one's rushing you through a meal or steering you toward the tourist special. You eat what you remember. And sometimes you discover new favorites along the way. Yes, over the 3 weeks of great food and a bit of beer, I might have put on a bit of weight, but I also gained something better, the feeling that I had come back home to a part of myself. Jivoli.